Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining the call. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. As you are joining, would love for you to engage in the chat box, which is down in the bottom of the Zoom if you're on the computer. We'd love to hear your name, your location, and any volunteer teams you were a part of during the campaign. Go ahead and put those out there. We've got people, it looks like from Texas. It's going quick. Holy smokes. I don't know if we'll be able to keep up. Oh my gosh. Michigan, Atlanta, Chicago, Arizona, Alabama, Phoenix, Arizona, Minnesota, Vermont, California. Yes, keep them coming. As you're coming in, we'd love to see your name, location, and any volunteer teams you're a part of during the campaign. We have lots of folks logging in. We will get started here in just a few minutes. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Super excited to be here with you. As we're waiting for folks to join, I'm going to just give a few tech reminders. If possible, it's best if you can participate in tonight's call from a computer or from the Zoom app, which you can download for free on your smartphone. This way you can actually see the slides that we'll have on the presentation, but also participate in some activities we'll be doing in the chat box. But you can also dial in manually on your phone. So that's also an option. Hey, everybody, we're about to get started in just a few minutes. As you're joining, please go ahead and put where you're from and what volunteer teams you have been a part of. All over the country. I've seen Los Angeles, New Jersey, California, Illinois, Arizona. Everybody from all over the country has joined us. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining our volunteer appreciation call tonight. I am Misty Beck. I was the Iowa State Director, so helped run the Iowa campaign where, we knocked over 500,000 doors in the month of January because of people like you, and made tens and thousands of calls. And then I was able to join the national team as the National Director of Field and Organizing. And so we're so excited to kick this call off tonight with Senator Sanders. And thank you for the amazing work you did. Our volunteers from all across the country made this unprecedented movement possible. Together, we sent over 260 million text messages. We made 48 million calls, and we knocked 6,600,000 doors. And that would not have been possible but without your hard work. So we just want to thank you so much for joining the call tonight. And we're going to talk a little bit about more ways in which you can help to continue to build the revolution and be part of our mass people's movement that we've created across the country. We have some special guests on tonight who can tell you how to get plugged in. So please hang tight. We expect the call to be about 40 minutes or so total, but we got some good stuff for you. So thank you so much for joining the call. And with that, I'm very excited to introduce, of course, our guest, our special guest that got you to join this call. Senator Sanders has joined us. And Senator, we would love for you to go ahead and address the crowd. We've got almost 10,000 folks on the call right now.
Okay. Misty, thank you very much. Thank you for your great work in our campaign and the great work you're doing now. And let me thank all of the people on this phone for your extraordinary commitment to democracy, to grassroots activism, and for your help on my presidential campaign. And what I want to express to you is that while our campaign was not successful in securing the number of delegates we needed to win the Democratic nomination, we ran a campaign that was unprecedented and historical in the modern history of our country and will have a lasting impact on our nation. And I think, as all of you know, because you probably heard me say it a million times, our campaign was based on the need for a political revolution. And that revolution had two fundamental principles. And the first was that we needed an agenda, a program that spoke to the needs of working people all across our country, whether they were Black or white or Latino, Native American, or Asian Americans. We know then and we know today that tens and tens and tens of millions of our people are struggling. They're struggling especially today with the economic meltdown that we're experiencing. They're struggling to put food on their table. They're struggling to pay their rent, to pay their mortgages, to maintain a minimal standard of living. And we brought forth an agenda that not only spoke to the needs of working people, it uniquely, of all the campaigns out there, had the courage to take on the power of the corporate elite and the 1%. It was our campaign that talked about the grotesque level of income and wealth inequality. That was not a subject talked about in polite conversation until we began talking about it. And yes, we said, it is not acceptable that 3 people in America own more wealth than the bottom half of our country. That while 500,000 people tonight are homeless and half of our people are living paycheck to paycheck, the top 1% owns more wealth than the bottom 92%, and almost half of all new income is going to the top 1%. You can't be serious about politics unless you have the courage to take on Wall Street and the drug companies and the insurance companies and the fossil fuel industry and the military industrial complex and the prison industrial complex. That is what our campaign, with your help, did. And the issues that we raised, which just a few years ago seemed really radical ideas, nobody was talking about them. Today, they have been adopted by politicians all across this country, and in fact have been in many states implemented. You know, we said, doesn't seem like a very radical idea now, that if you work 40 hours a week, you should not be living in poverty. You got to raise that minimum wage to $15 an hour. 7 or 8 states around the country have already done that, as have many, many cities. House of Representatives did. We said that if you are able to work in America, you are entitled to a job, equal pay for equal work. Those that if you want to join a union, you should be able to do that. Those ideas were once thought to be radical, ain't radical today. We talked about the need for all of our people, regardless of income, to get a higher education, to cancel all student debt in this country, because the future of America rests with our young people, and they need the best education they can possibly get. We talked about healthcare as a human right and the need to end this absurd, dysfunctional, and cruel private employer-based health insurance system. Let me tell you something about that. Last poll that I saw, 69% of the American people now support Medicare for all. And I suspect that number will go up because, as all of you know, tragically, 26 million Americans have filed for unemployment in the last 5 weeks. 26 million. And many of those people are losing their health insurance. So the idea that we should have health care as an employee benefit rather than as a human right for all of our people, from children to the very old, is now something that more and more people understand. That was an issue that we pushed out there onto the agenda. We talked about the need to address the existential threat of climate change as a major, major priority well before anybody else was talking about it. We talked about criminal justice reform and the racism involved when we have more people in jail than any other country, disproportionately African American and Latino and Native American. And what sense is it to spend $80 billion a year locking up our fellow Americans? And you all know what hellholes many of these prisons and jails are, and the tragedy we're seeing today with the spread of the coronavirus in these jails. So we led the effort, working with other great grassroots organizations, to say that we should invest in our young people, invest in jobs, invest in education, not lock up more people, end this mass incarceration. And we talked about the need for comprehensive immigration reform. And just last night, I don't know if any of you saw it, we had a virtual town meeting on immigration. And the understanding that today you have millions and millions of undocumented people who are on the front lines of our economy. They are the people working in the fields, picking crops. They are the people working in meat processing plants. They're the people working in grocery stores. They're doing the hardest work and often the jobs that expose them to people who have the coronavirus. And despite doing the hardest work, despite getting paid abysmally low wages, they're not, and despite paying billions of dollars in taxes, they're not able to get a nickel in federal benefits. They're not going to get the increased unemployment benefits that American workers will get. They're not going to get those. They're not going to get the $1,200 checks that are going out. They're not going to get the small business loans and grants because they're undocumented, yet they're suffering terribly. And we have made the point that we're not going to allow this country to be divided up by Trump. We are all standing together under the banner of solidarity. So the first point of our campaign, which has been, in a sense, wildly successful, is transforming political consciousness in America, making people understand what we are entitled to as human beings. And in that sense, we have fundamentally changed the nature of American politics, and that is what you accomplished. And the second thing that we did, though, which was also uniquely successful, is that we said, you know what, we're not going to be dependent on wealthy folks and super PACs to run our campaign. We're not going to use all our money to put stupid 30-second TV ads on the air. We did some of that. We understand that you're not going to change America, transform the country, unless you transform the American people and their political consciousness. So what we did and what tonight is about, and what you all did, is create the strongest grassroots political movement, certainly in the modern history of this country. And Misty just gave you an indication of what you all did. I mean, I'm looking at these numbers, and it really is just off the charts. Together, you guys, in sometimes bitter cold weather, remember that, in Iowa, New Hampshire, and other states, you knocked on over 6 million doors. You transformed the political consciousness of millions of people. You made 48 million phone calls. You made 259 million text messages. That's a crazy number, but that's what you did. Because what we understand is not only the ideas that we fight for, they happen to be the right ideas, but those ideas don't mean anything unless millions of people are prepared to stand up and fight for them. And that is what you did. And that is what groups like People's Action and the Center for Popular Democracy and Mijente and Sunrise and Dream Defenders did. You are the folks, along with other great groups, out there knocking on doors, talking to your coworkers, talking to your neighbors, telling them that they have got to stand up and fight for justice. So I just want to thank all of the organizations that played such an active role in the campaign. Now, I think all of you know that when you take on the power structure of society, when you take on Wall Street and all of these powerful special interests, and when you take on the corporate media, and when you take on the political establishment, that's not an easy fight. That is not an easy fight. It's a fight, frankly, that no presidential candidate has ever succeeded in overcoming. They have endless amounts of money and extraordinary power. But I think all of you understand that we went probably further in that effort than any campaign, maybe in American history, certainly in the modern history of this country. That is what we accomplished. And I know that all of you also know that real change doesn't come easy. You think back to American history, you think about the struggles of the labor movement going back well over 100 years, where people fought and died for dignity on the job. And you think about the struggles of the civil rights movement, where people were lynched and beaten, murdered the worst way, just the fight to end segregation and racism, the right to vote. And the women's movement, where 100 years ago today, women in America didn't even have the right to vote, let alone do the work they wanted or get the education they wanted. Talk about the struggles of the gay community, the environmental community. All right, so what everybody in this room knows is that when we're talking about real change, guaranteeing health care to all people with human rights, you got to take on the insurance industry and the drug companies. If you want to have a vibrant democracy, you got to take on all of those people who are trying to suppress the vote. If you want decent wages for workers, you're going to have to take on all those people who are exploiting workers today. They're doing great while they're paying workers $9, $10 an hour. We got to take them on. So, as I mentioned several weeks ago, we have suspended our campaign. We have simply said we don't have enough, delegates to win the thing. That's about it. But the campaign may have ended, but the struggle continues. The struggle for economic justice, the struggle for social justice, the struggle for racial justice, the struggle for environmental justice. That fight continues. And the groups that who have helped us in the campaign are a means by which you can get involved and continue that struggle. So I hope very much that all of you understand that as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. talked about, and I'm paraphrasing him, the arc of justice takes a long time. That's a bad paraphrasing, but it's, change doesn't take place overnight. And if we give up, and if we despair, and if we turn into ourselves, then that fight for justice will never succeed. So I would hope that tonight you pay attention to what the folks representing People's Action and the Center for Popular Democracy and the Mijente, and Sunrise and Dream Defenders have to say. They are all excellent grassroots organizations. There are others out there. But main point that I want to make tonight is in this unprecedented moment in American history where we are facing this terrible, terrible pandemic, which has already cost us over 50,000 lives and 1 million people have been infected, where we have an economic meltdown. So many of our people are living in desperation, having lost their jobs. Now is the moment, I think, to rethink what America can become, the kind of nation that we can become. And let me conclude by simply saying to you what I said 1 million times on the campaign, and that is to quote Nelson Mandela, who said, "It always seems impossible until it is done. It always seems impossible until it is done." And our job is to get it done. Is to understand that while today it may seem difficult, 50 years from now, 30 years from now, people will look back and say, wow, look what they did. They brought health care to all people. They built the affordable housing that we needed and ended homelessness in America. They made sure that all of our kids have a decent education. They had America lead the world in the fight against climate change and against environmental degradation. All right. So we can do it. We can do it when we stand together, when we don't let Trump and his friends divide us up, and we keep our eyes on the prize. So once again, let me thank all of you for your help in the campaign. Sometimes I read that, people say that Bernie Sanders inspired them. Well, let me say very much the opposite. You have inspired me. It has been the joy of my life to get around this country, to meet thousands and thousands of wonderful people, to look into smiling faces of people who believe in justice, who believe in love, compassion. So I want to thank all of you on behalf of Jane and myself for the inspiration and the energy that you have given us. So thank you all very much, and look forward to continue to working with you. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator, for that. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I'm seeing lots of comments on the chat, so please keep telling us where you are from. As the saying goes, don't mourn, organize. So we're going to talk about what we accomplished and what's left to do. I have a long background in community organizing and issue-based organizing. In fact, I cut my teeth in organizing with People's Action, who's on the call tonight. And I share that because I actually truly believe the moment that we're in right now has been waiting for us. The moment we're in right now needs sophisticated, experienced, trained, skilled organizers. And people all across the country are rising up in organic ways and are waiting for us to come with them, right? And many of you have already been a part of that. So I'm very excited to talk about how to do that. So we're gonna celebrate the incredible work that you've done. We're gonna hear about some of the amazing stuff that people on this call did. And then we're gonna talk about what we gotta do to continue to carrying out our work. And some of the organizations on the call tonight have been there with us along the way, the entire campaign, but many have been there for decades before and have been on the front lines. And I've always said we are a movement of movements, right? Whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's the environmental justice movement, raising the minimum wage. Many of the people who've been a part of this campaign really paved the way to make sure that Senator Sanders could lead us in changing the narrative in this country about what's possible. So next, we're going to hear from Claire Wyatt, the director of the campaign's national events program. So I'm excited to introduce you to Claire.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Misty, and so good to be here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. We wanted to take just a few minutes to celebrate the absolutely incredible, unprecedented, and really record-breaking work that every person on this call did. As staff members, it was genuinely the honor of a lifetime to work with all of you. Many of you dedicated 3, 5, 10, 20, or even more than 20 hours a week working and organizing towards this movement. We are so humbled to have had the opportunity to organize with you. So we're going to shout out some of the volunteer teams without whom all of this organizing would totally not have been possible. So look right now, find the raise your hand button on your Zoom control panel. If you're on the app or calling it from a computer, find the raise your hand button. And I'm going to shout out different teams and some of their achievements. If you were a member of that team, be sure to raise your hand when I talk about it. So raise your hand if you made calls on the Bernie dialer or were part of the call team, which made 49 million calls to voters. Amazing. Raise your hand if you were a door-to-door canvasser who helped us knock on over 6.6 million doors. Raise your hand if you were a texter who helped us send over 260 million texts to voters. Raise your hand if you were a Spanish language texter who helped us send 14 million texts to voters. Raise your hand if you were a volunteer support mod who managed over 4 million questions in Slack. That's an unbelievable number. Raise your hand if you were a text sweeper who reviewed over 2 million conversations. Raise your hand if you were an event host and hosted an event for Bernie. All of you hosted nearly 59,000 events talking for voters altogether. Raise your hand if you were a Bernie Victory Captain who hosted over 14,500 events talking to voters. Raise your hand if you were a volunteer in one of the many states around the country who helped knock millions of doors, build teams in your communities, and help manage dozens of offices. Raise your hand if you were part of Students for Bernie, who ran trainings for students in every single state and recruited thousands of student volunteer organizers to mobilize your schools. Raise your hand if you were a community connector, from Unidos con Bernie to Union Members for Bernie, who hosted over 6,000 events in their communities. Raise your hand if you took a Bernie journey, Our Bernie Journey volunteers made over 10,000 trips to key early voting states. Raise your hand if you were on the advanced call team who made over 500,000 calls to fellow volunteers. Raise your hand if you were on SuperDesk, who answered over 500,000 messages, chats, and calls from folks to the campaign. Raise your hand if you're part of the friend-to-friend support team, who empowered tens of thousands of supporters to bring their friends and family into this movement. Raise your hand if you're a member of Vanguard, the team that cut turf for over 1,300 precincts in 10 states and created about 17,000 open VPV lists. Raise your hand if you're a member of the data entry team, we're almost there, who entered over 20,000 sheets of data throughout the campaign. Raise your hand if you were an event sweeper who moderated over 58,000 volunteer events. Raise your hand if you were a member of the event support team who made over 46,000 calls by hand to event hosts. And lastly, raise your hand if you were a moderator on any of these teams. Our moderators supported all of the teams I just mentioned every hour of the day in Slack and made all of this work possible. So that is just a tiny snapshot of all of the work so many of you did. That's not an exhaustive list, but I want you to really breathe it in and think about all of the incredible work that you all did. And to wrap up this part, we're gonna take just about 15 seconds. I'd love for everybody to find the chat box. And if you're willing, type into the chat box, what is your biggest victory from volunteering with the campaign? However you define that. What is your biggest victory? Let's take a second to put that in the chat box right now. Wow, there's a lot of answers coming in. My computer actually is not keeping up. Amazing. Keep putting that, sharing in there, what that looked like for you. And really take this in. You all have built such an unprecedented movement. And I want to say thank you all from the bottom of our hearts. Next, we are going to hear from the Bernie 2020 National Field Director, Becca Rast.
We have Becca.
Okay, I think you guys can hear me now. Thank you so much, Claire. What a phenomenal reminder of all the amazing work we've done together. Thank you all for the work that you did to build such a powerful campaign. I had the honor over the past year of serving as Bernie Sanders Field Director, and I know Bernie already said this, but this campaign really was always about us, all of us on this call, and the hundreds of thousands, millions of other people that were part of this campaign. And Bernie really believed that. He always pushed everyone on the campaign to be oriented to the movement, to the working class people who were giving an average of $18 to this campaign. And we as a campaign actually recruited for hundreds of picket lines, worker actions, climate strikes. It was really beautiful. And like Misty, I come out of community organizing, grassroots organizing. I'm calling from my hometown in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where I started organizing in high school. And I know that grassroots organizations and movements have always led the progressive movement in our country and will continue to do so. Elections are obviously a critical path and tactic for changing the course of the history in the United States, but long-term people-powered organizations are so important to creating that change that we need in the long term. And so we're so happy to have 5 national organizations here doing incredible work. And they've heard about the amazing right skills you all have as volunteers and are excited to get you all involved in the work that they and their affiliates are doing. So I'm really excited to have them here on the call. To introduce these organizations, I'm gonna turn it over to our amazing political director, Ana Lilia Mejia.
Can folks hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. All right, so I'll be brief. I mean, bottom line, like Claire and Becca and the senator, I also come out of movement building and organizing. And so when I took on the role of political director, and had my first conversations with the senator, we focused on how we can make sure that we're talking to regular people and that we reach people in the ways in which they naturally organize themselves. We were very interested in making sure that we reached out to folks and connected to folks who were focused on immigrant justice, environmental justice, fighting climate change, defending the rights of immigrants, making sure that we fought for economic justice, on and on and on. And so, you know, very proud to have worked with these organizations and to have earned their endorsement of the senator. Many of you, through your volunteer efforts, actually played a key role in engaging with these organizations. If you took part in turning out for a solidarity action, or if you turned out to support an organization, a strike, any kind of activism, you were essentially helping our political program make sure that we connected our supporters with organizations that were like-minded to the senator. And so, you know, we're going to be talking to just 5 incredible organizations tonight. There are many that we're going to ask you to consider joining and supporting. The reality is that the fight continues, and you have an opportunity to really help push all of the issues that the senator wanted to accomplish as president of the United States. You still have an opportunity to help move these. So People's Action, that focuses on housing, economic justice, racial justice. Sunrise, that is at the forefront of fighting climate change. CPD, same, housing, economic justice, racial justice across this country. Mijente, that's leading the charge on immigrant rights advocacy and engaging the Latino electorate across the board. And Dream Defenders, who have been at the forefront of racial justice and economic justice across the South, and probably going above and beyond. So without further ado, I'll hand it back to Becca, who's going to run us through our roster of incredible organizations.
Thank you so much, Ana Lilia, and thank you for your work on the campaign. First up, we have Jen Carrillo from People's Action. I'll turn it over to you, Jen.
Thanks. Can everybody hear me? Hey, everyone. My name is Jen Carrillo, and I'm an organizer with People's Action. I'm also a pledged Sanders delegate and Illinois co-chair for the Sanders campaign. And last year, I primaried a 20-year moderate Democrat to become the first Latinx and LGBTQ member of my local city council. And honestly, the best way that I can tell you what People's Action is and what we're all about is by sharing my story. Because my story is a testament to the power of organizing in a political home that has your back. A little over a decade ago, I was a pissed off, undocumented kid with no real future ahead of me. I was angry that my status had kept me from going to college. I was angry that both of my parents lost their job in the post 9/11 crackdown of immigrants, that my family was on the verge of losing our home after the financial crisis, and that no matter how hard we worked, we never seemed to be able to make ends meet. And I didn't know what to do with that anger. But then I connected with Illinois People's Action, a People's Action affiliate, and they invested in me. People's Action taught me how to organize, gave me the tools that I needed to become a powerful leader in my own community, and connected me to a national organizing scene and a network of fellow rabble-rousers that I could make trouble with. And so I'm gonna share a few images because before I knew it, I was on stage at a People's Action convention talking to thousands of other pissed off working class people like myself, leading chants outside the ICE office, calling for just immigration reform, disrupting bank stockholder meetings, occupying and calling for a complete reimagining of our economy, putting 1,000 people in front of Tim Geithner's front lawn, organizing civil disobedience outside the White House, taking my first arrest, and most recently running for office and actually winning and getting elected. So organizing with People's Action helped me regain my dignity as a person and transform me in the most profound way possible. And it's because of that that I work every day to build power for the multiracial working class by helping everyday people realize their own power and strength through People's Action. And that's why I'm here today. I'm here to recruit you. I'm here to invite you to join People's Action and to allow yourself to be transformed as I was. At People's Action, we believe in movement politics, in putting everyday people like myself in positions of governing power. in practicing politics that are grounded in what people like my parents and your parents actually need, and not what the establishment tells us is politically possible. We believe in housing as a human right, and we are fighting like hell to make a homes guarantee a reality in people's lives. We believe that all people are inherently deserving of care, and so we are all in for Medicare for all. We believe that our well-being as a people depends on the well-being of this planet, so we are throwing down for a Green New Deal. We believe that no one should have to go broke because they want an education, so we are working towards free college for all. And finally, and I think most importantly, we believe in the power of working class people to come together and beat all odds and win. And so we know that we have a lot of danger ahead of us with this pandemic, but also a big opening to make our issues and our values, which are the same issues and values at the center of the Sanders campaign, a part of the new common sense in the United States. And so, as many have said before me, the struggle continues, la lucha sigue, and we need you to help us make it happen. So please join us.
Thank you so much, Jen, and thank you, People's Action, for all your amazing work. I am very excited to turn it over next to one of my dear friends, Varshini Prakash from Sunrise Movement.
Hi, everybody. My name is Varshini. I am the executive director and one of the co-founders of Sunrise Movement, and also was honored to be the Bernie Sanders co-chair in Massachusetts. I am so humbled and thankful to be here. So for those of you who don't know what Sunrise is, we are a movement of young people to stop the climate crisis, to build economic prosperity and racial equity for all through a Green New Deal. And we exist and move at the intersections of protest organizing and electoral politics. So it's only been 3 years since we launched, but since then we have been organizing tens of thousands of young people to hold our elected officials of both political parties accountable, to demand that our Democrats have the courage and the spine to back solutions at the scale of the crises that we face, to shine a light on the corruption of the GOP and how their denial and their misinformation campaigns are killing and displacing and will kill and will displace millions of people worldwide. So we have been training thousands of people across the country to learn the skills of grassroots organizing and take action in their communities. And collectively with our partners and allies in the climate and environmental justice movement, in labor and more, have been able to popularize the solutions to this crisis that meet the scale and scope of the true emergency that we are facing, calling on our leaders to do what is necessary to protect human civilization as we know it and save the one home that we collectively share. And so Bernie Sanders was one of the biggest inspirations for why we created Sunrise in the first place. We saw him calling for urgent and sweeping action to stop the climate crisis when other politicians wouldn't. We saw him energizing millions of young people who had never gotten involved in politics before. And we realized in that moment that there was power on the table for our generation in the political arena, and we had champions to back us up. So just a few years later, this January, it made it all the more sweet that thousands of Sunrise members voted to officially endorse and support Bernie Sanders' campaign for president. And so, this may be the end of the campaign, of Bernie Sanders' campaign for president of the United States, but I think what he said at the beginning of this call is totally right. This is just the beginning of our fight to secure a Green New Deal for our country and the world. And so here's what we're up to make that happen. So we're really using this moment to train over 10,000 leaders in grassroots organizing skills and the Green New Deal through an online mass training program called Sunrise School. We are carrying forward the mission of the Green New Deal to help down-ballot candidates who are running on the Green New Deal win in states across America. So we made hundreds of thousands of calls and knocked thousands of doors for candidates like Marie Newman in Illinois and Mike Siegel in Texas to defeat corporate Democrats. And now we're going to be throwing down for folks like Charles Booker, who's running for Senate to defeat Mitch McConnell, Jamal Bowman in the Bronx, Andrew Romanoff in Colorado, and asking all of you to throw down to support the energy and the vision of what Bernie Sanders was building to continue into the years to come. And I think in the next few months and year, we will be working alongside our comrades, so many of them who are on this call, to fight with everything we've got to make sure that the relief and the recovery from this coronavirus crisis is a just and equitable one. And one that not only helps people and provides them with short-term support for those who need it, but also works out to chart the vision for how we emerge from this crisis stronger than before and ready to fight the existing existential threats to working Americans that this crisis is laying bare. So we need to ensure that our vision and Bernie's vision for this country wins in this moment, and that the wealthy and the powerful do not succeed in using the shock and awe of the coronavirus to put forward their anti-people of color, anti-working class, anti-climate agenda. So we got a lot of work to do. I hope you will join us. You can do so by going to sunrisemovement.org and joining us there. And also if you go to smvmt.org/sunrise school, we'd love for you to join our training program as well. And also throw down with the partners on this call: People's Action, Mijente, Dream Defenders, so many unbelievable organizations, and we would not be the organization that we are without them. And I'm so blessed to be here with all of you. So back to you, Becca. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much, Varshini. Thanks for joining us tonight. And we're going to go next to Jennifer X. Addison from the Center for Popular Democracy Action. Over to you.
Good evening, family. You know, I thought a lot about what I would want to say on this call. My name is Jen X. Addison. I feel so deeply moved by the opportunity to speak to folks who are the reason why our network of grassroots community organizations, of working folks, of people who are not working, of Black and brown folks in 34 states across this country wanted to throw in behind this presidential campaign. You know, truth be told, our folks have been working with Bernie Sanders for, many years in his role in the Senate. And yet, for us to decide to make a first ever presidential endorsement, it was absolutely because of y'all and the movement that you have built. And so it is an honor as a Black woman who comes from literally the worst state in America to be raised by, to be a Black person, as the granddaughter of sharecroppers, of a woman who was picking cotton at the age of 4. It is an honor to be a part of this movement with you. I just have a few seconds here, so I have to say what is truly on my mind, which is, for the last several weeks, the affiliates in our network in all those 34 states have been doing things like helping their members locate the bodies of loved ones, like dealing with the fact that folks are homeless and unhoused and yet told to shelter in place. They have been, desperately trying to figure out how to feed themselves and waiting in hours-long lines for food, because they are undocumented, and the minuscule amount of relief that this government has provided, they are not even eligible for. And so I have to say, as I watch Black folks, across this country dying at higher rates than anyone else, as I watch the pathetic response that we've seen from, people in power, I have to say that our work is not only not done, but our vision for this country is even more critical now than it ever was. And I am so honored to work with each of the organizations that are on this call, and to work with literally tens of thousands of people across this country who are unaffiliated to any organization and are still a part of a beautiful community of action. So we want to say to you, I acknowledge the pain that folks are going through, but I also want to acknowledge that this crisis existed for many of you and for the people who are a part of this movement long before COVID-19 hit our country's borders. And so the fight we have to do is on two folds, and I'll end with this. First and foremost, we have to keep believing that another world is possible. I know that it is hard to do, but my ancestors did it, your ancestors did it, and we must keep doing it. Secondly, we have got to put our energy behind building local, state, and federal progressive power. That means we can't just give up on the electoral process. We need to take the immense power we've built and use it to be a part of a governing coalition that can win tangible things for our communities. And lastly, we have to be in motion direct action in this moment really is our only option. When we have people in power who are not even, I don't think we have 12 Democrats who are proposing anything to meet the scale of the crisis that we are in. And when we have that little power to really move our issue agenda, direct action has to be our tactic. So we have affiliates organizing rent strikes. We have folks who are taking over vacant properties. We have people providing mutual aid to each other. And if you would like to help support that, or if you would just like a toolkit, how on this May Day you can help your community organize those types of efforts, then you can sign up on the link in the chat. You can find me on social media, and we will get the tools in your hands for you to show up the exact same way you've been showing up already, for you to put your efforts where you're most passionate about. I'm here with you. And I also want to say that we believe survivors at CPD Action, and we are with you, that we need to build a society where we can hold white supremacy and patriarchal domination accountable. So I hear you in the chat.
Thank you so much, Jen, and thank you for grounding us in what's at stake right now and in the history that we all are part of. So I now want to turn it over to Sofia Campos from Mijente. Thank you for being on, Sofia.
Thank you all. It's an honor, as everybody else has mentioned, to be here with y'all. Thank you to all the listeners, all the folks on the video call who put in so much work and love from the bottom of your hearts. We're with you. I know for myself as a Peruvian immigrant, I live in Phoenix now, but I grew up next door in California. And growing up undocumented, I know what having to deal with crisis on a day-to-day basis is, on a year-to-year basis is, on a just real tip of like not being able to plan your life because of how unstable the circumstances are, right? The circumstances that we've inherited are. And I think this moment that we're in, this pandemic, is just bringing to light, as many of you all have already mentioned, the crises that many of our gente, many of our communities were already living in for such a long time. And so I'm really proud to be here to talk about Mijente, which is a multi-generational political home for Latinx, Chicanx people across the US and Puerto Rico who are pro-Black, pro-worker, pro-woman, pro-migrant, pro-earth, and pro-healthcare for all. We are with you. We are with this campaign every step of the way. And I'm so proud that our 1,200 strong membership voted to endorse Senator Sanders in our first ever national endorsement. We are Latinx and Chicanx people that are part of movements for justice and self-determination for all people. And that means that we're a fighting organization. We were created to call attention to and address the lack of political organization in our Latino communities, independent of the democratic establishment and corporate interests, to fight for economic, racial, gender, and climate justice. Now, organizing teaches us that no one is coming to save us. And as people of color, as working class people, as people who are literally fighting to protect our families, protect our people, we know that we have to transform ourselves in order to save ourselves and each other. And this is why we built this political home for Latinx, Chicanx change makers, to fight outside, within, and against the state, to put pueblo primero, community first. And so just some of the work that we are doing outside of the state, working with Latinos who have been part of cooperatives for a very long time, working with folks who have been working on land and liberation projects, who have been forming mutual aid funds, but also centering our culture in all of that work. We know that the cultura cura, right? Our cultures heal. And so we have La Cura podcast. Just this past weekend, I put on this Drag King bilingual storytime event online that was amazing and that I never imagined possible, but a political home like Mijente makes that possible, because we are here for our familias, to hold each other, to bring joy to one another, and to remind each other of the memory of hope, even in times of struggle. We also work against the state. We just put out a report that covers the COVID impact on Latinos across the United States. We put out our Pueblo Primero demands, and we are going to be targeting members of Congress, as well as pushing for state and local responses to meet our community's needs. And then, of course, within the state, we not only endorse I wish it was President Sanders, Senator Sanders, but we're also running the Fuera Trump campaign, knowing that the last 4 years of this administration has literally been hell for our communities. It is not just a matter of being talked down to constantly by Trump, but also literally means the difference between having a chance to fight for our people's ability to stay here, to not be deported, and not having that chance at all. And so we know very clearly what is at stake. It is also the difference between having DACA, which I fought for and won with our fellow immigrant undocumented youth at the time, and now having DACA be contested in the Supreme Court and waiting for that decision to take place. So we are fighting to get Trump out of that White House. And we have a Voto de Mayo event coming up this May 5th. If you go to fueratrump.com, you can learn more about our campaign there. But we're also endorsing Latinx candidates at the local and state levels, knowing that there are many ways that we can fight within the state while we are running multiple strategies at the same time. And so Mijente is really looking for the people who are looking for us. If you are Latinx or Chicanx and share community values or pro Pueblo values, we invite you to join us, to dance with us, to fight with us, and to build home with us long term, because that's what's needed to not burn out, to not lose hope, is each other, is community, is our Pueblo. And so, yeah, I'll end with that, and I'll pass it to Becca and Phil to close us off.
Thank you so much, Sophia, and thanks to Mijente for all your amazing work. Our final organization is Dream Defenders, so I'm going to pass it over to Phil Agnew from the Dream Defenders.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can. Good evening, Phil.
Okay. Thank y'all for having me. As we already know, May Day is just a few days away, and for me, I couldn't think of a better way than to spend the days leading up to it with you all. You all are my comrades, my friends, my heroes. Sophia, I love you. It was just great to sit here and witness through the screen. It was a sincere honor to serve this campaign for the last 7 months. And I'm very excited to tell you all tonight about the organization that I helped co-found in 2012 and that I returned to in recent weeks, the Dream Defenders. Dream Defenders is a Black-led, multiracial organization of young people who are organizing to advance a new vision through a radical left agenda called the Freedom Papers. Through it, we are advancing our vision of safety and security, away from prisons, deportation, and war, and towards healthcare, housing, jobs, and the ability to move or stay for all people. We believe that the left is the only way forward. And for 8 years, we have been working both to change the material conditions of the working people of Florida and to popularize a radical left imagination in politics. We also believe that though Corona is the virus, that racial capitalism, patriarchy, and neoliberalism are the crises. Currently, our plans center on moving state attorneys across the state of Florida to adopt a decarceral platform, such as ending arrests and letting out all people being held on pretrial detention. We're collecting stories from the inside. You can see those on our Instagram. We're filing a lawsuit. We've bailed out people, and we've been able to get hundreds of folks released from prison, and there are still many more folks that need to be released. We've also got statewide mutual aid programs in Florida to meet people's needs in the wake of this crisis. We've been organizing and supporting food giveaways across the state of Florida, and in Miami, we've set up showers and testing for the houseless community led by a good friend of mine, the People's Doctor, Dr. Armin Henderson. He's the Dream Defenders Director of Health Programs, and he's organized a network of thousands of medical practitioners across the state through his role as the chair of Doctors for America. Many of you all may remember his story. He was arrested and detained in front of his home a few weeks ago on his way to starting one of those Friday food giveaways and testing excursions. Our current programs include free mental health counseling, free testing and medical treatment, space for people to quarantine should they not have a safe place to do so, meal programs for the homeless, and making food and supplies available for people who need them. The Dream Defenders in Florida are doing what the state is not doing. We believe that is the duty of left organizations right now, and we are meeting that need no matter how wide. We need immediate resources and donations to scale these programs. And if you all go to our website, dreamdefenders.org, you can find some more information about how you can donate to the bail fund or donate to our relief fund that we have. We also want to invite you all this Sunday to our second Sunday school at 1 o'clock Eastern. We'll send the link out. It's an incredible time for us to come together, have music, to share, to dance if you want to, because what's a movement that cannot move? But also to get some marching orders, because we don't know when, but we are going to be able to move about in a matter of months, maybe a year. But whenever we get out, we want to be prepared to move. And we're giving out marching orders at our Sunday schools. The old world is dying and a new world is struggling to be born. We believe, as I said, that only through strong left organizations will we win the country and the world that we deserve. So I'm asking you all to join us, join another organization on this call or a local one that's not on this call, or start an organization. No matter what you do, as we said earlier, now is not the time to mourn. We can acknowledge the pain, we can acknowledge the struggle, we can move through it, but we cannot be stuck in it. Now is not the time to mourn. This is the time to build. The empire is crumbling all around us, and this is the time for us to build. We are not dead. Our caskets stay vacant. Our deathbeds still long for our arrival, and rumors of our demise remain greatly, greatly exaggerated. Forward ever, backward never. Happy May Day. Love to all of you all, and thank you all for allowing us to be on the call. Struggle continues.
Amen. Thank you so much, Phil. And that's right, the struggle does continue. I said this earlier, but my heart is in the movement and in community organizing. And I know that this is a long haul fight. And I want to ask you guys to make sure to sign up to participate in one of these organizations. We're also going to drop in another link to a list of a number of other organizations that you can join. We can only feature some on this call tonight. And I'm so grateful to all of our amazing speakers. But the change that we all fought for will never just be won with one election. It's going to take immense amounts of a lifetime of organizing. And so I hope you all really take time to think about what that looks like for you and for your family and your community to step up and continue to do this work, because it really is going to take millions, tens of millions of people to transform this country into a place that truly works for all of us. And to close out this call, I just want to say thank you, and I cannot wait to continue doing this work with each and every one of you. We're going to always be a Bernie family that will never end, and so thank you all for everything, and thank you again to Senator Sanders for his leadership and for inspiring so many of us and for building a movement that we all get to be part of for the rest of our lives. So thank you all so much. Hope everybody has a great rest of their night.
Thank you.
Thank you.